Untamed is going to be untamed. It's going to be a little crazy. I want to talk to my people. I want to talk to my brothers and sisters. We can have grace and humility in how we interact with other people.
Oh, hot dog, look at you.
And nobody talked about what's really happening.
And let's have conversations about what truth is.
Hey, welcome back. Sorry I'm a few minutes late. I got a little busy getting a haircut. They cut almost 4 inches of hair off the back of my head. So for those of you that thought I should have kept it, I did not keep it. I cut it off. And my hairdresser, who's been my hairdresser for, I don't know, 5 years, said, you can never let your hair get that long again. So it is gone. Well, today we're going to talk about the government shutdown and some of the turmoil that's going on in Washington, D.C. Whose fault is it? That's really what it comes down to, isn't it? Whose fault is it? Is it the Republicans or the Democrats? I would have to tell you that it is absolutely the Democrats. At the same time, I would tell you that I think it's a little bit of kabuki theater. I think both sides are complicit in the idea to keep the government shut down. They're negotiating behind closed doors. They're doing the things that they need behind the scene. But the people are the ones that suffer the most. I had a conversation with someone who I've known for a long time, over 20 years, and her husband is in the military. And they have a mortgage to pay. And now it's gone on for 16 days. How are they going to pay their mortgage? And is this going to lead to bank defaults? Is it going to lead to other problems in our society where, we find ourselves in the same place we were in 2008? It could. It could happen. But at the end of the day, who cares? As long as the politicians get their $300 million, as long as they can make $300 million on $160,000 and they can short stocks and do everything that they can to insider trade and not get in trouble for it, only people that get in trouble for it is Martha Stewart and you. They don't get in trouble for anything. So we're going to talk about that. Now, ultimately, what it comes down to is, do we want to capitulate and give in to the Democrats and say, hey, let's give illegals health care? And the Democrats are walking around saying that's not what we said. We just want to reinstitute this part of a previous bill, and that gives free health care to illegals. So then we're going to be joined by a guest. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that we've been dealing with related to ICE. And now, somewhere along the line on the ICE side, they think it's a good idea to go after ICE agents' husbands, wives, and children. I can tell you, if I was an ICE agent and someone came after my family, it would be the last day that they had. And frankly, whoever attacks somebody else's family, and it's the same thing they did to me. They went after my wife, they went after my children. And you can do whatever you want to me. You can come at me, and if you're ready for the consequences of your action, I'm good with it. But when you go after a man's or a woman's family, that's a whole new level of evil. But we're going to be joined also by a guest, Dr. Kevin Barrett. He's a journalist, author, and global media voice. He's got a Substack, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And he's going to give us a deep dive into what's happening with the Israel-Hamas ceasefire and some of the foreign influences that we'd have to deal with. It's pretty tangled. It's a tangled web of influence that's gripping U.S. leaders. Now, does that extend into President Trump? Is his cabinet, is the people around him compromised to a place where they're having to do things that under a normal day they wouldn't do? I don't know. But Dr. Barrett's going to go through that with us and kind of give us his thought on that as well. So we're going to talk about a lot today. Let me tell you a little bit about our guest, just kind of go through a bio. And we'll start there. He has a PhD in Islamic studies and Arabic. Shwa Arabiya. I'm going to have a fun time talking to him a little bit about that. He's a former university instructor with degrees in journalism and literature. He taught at institutions in Paris, San Francisco Bay Area, and Wisconsin. So maybe we should ask him what's happened to academia. It's been weaponized against the young people of our these generations, these last probably 4 or 5. It's probably gone on longer than that. He's the host of Truth Jihad Radio, a weekly program exploring controversial topics. Co-host of the False Flag Weekly News, and I focus on geopolitical events. And he's the editor of Veterans Today, contributing to alternative news perspectives. He's been on multiple publications, and I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time. He's here, and I'm interested to see what he has to say. So, Dr. Barrett, welcome to the show. You there? Can you hear me? Can he hear me, guys?
Okay, I hear you now.
You hear me? All right. I can hear you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, hi, Joe. I heard the assistant, and now I just heard you.
All right, awesome. Well, you're live. You're on. So we got you. We got you covered. You didn't hear all the nice things I said about you before that?
I missed all of that. I'm sorry. You send me a transcript so I can put it on my resume?
Absolutely. So you have quite an interesting background. I got to read a few things on your Substack. And I'd like to just kind of start by you giving people a little bit of perspective of who you are. I did tell them about you being a previous professor, but they'd love to hear directly from you.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up alienated in the United States in the 70s. After I learned about the JFK assassination problem while I was in high school, and that kind of blew my mind. And so I had a real bad attitude about the establishment from that point forward. And
so that's a few decades ago.
That was a while ago. Yeah, I actually saw Mark Lane give a talk on the Zapruder film when it first was released, and that's what blew my mind, actually. And so I've known about this kind of thing for a long time, but I basically was looking for a way to make a living and do what I like. And one of the things I like doing is reading really good books. So I became a literature teacher. I got advanced degrees in French, English, and then Arabic, African literature. And I probably would be teaching like Moroccan Sufi storytelling today, except after 9/11, I started looking into that, and then I got mad again. And so I got so mad I couldn't keep my mouth shut, and I got nominated as the whipping boy for Scholars for 9/11 Truth in 2006. I got brought on Fox News to get yelled at by Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly, and I yelled back at them, and that made me unemployable in the universities in the United States. So since then, I've been an author and a podcaster like you, and a general all-around troublemaker.
Well, I don't mind being a troublemaker. I wish that I could be less of a troublemaker, and that we could actually debate the truth and make it something that we could focus in on. But it seems to be, I said this yesterday, and I've been thinking, I like to read a lot, by the way. And I spent 6.5 years working in the Middle East and Africa. شوية عربية. You speak Arabic?
Hey, مزيان. Yeah, أنا كنت في المغرب. نتكلم عربية بزاف.
I was saying that before you came on. I was like, I'll have to brush up on my Arabic and have these conversations. But I wish that we could get back to a place of debate. And I said yesterday that I feel like we're in two separate dimensions, one that's run by the ridiculous and almost a innate evil, and goodness, and or a mixed bag of what a community should look like. And now we're trying to coexist in the same place, and it's untenable. I mean, we're not going to get anywhere in our current state because the positions are so diabolically opposed. And I have a hard time believing that some of these radical leftists believe what they say. It's almost as if they're saying it with a straight face, but they can't believe it. I mean, you can't really believe it. Can you?
Yeah. No, I think you're onto something there. I think part of the leftist ideology does involve a lot of make-believe, a lot of wishful thinking, and then a lot of indoctrination. And having spent a lot of time in the universities, I got to know that firsthand. It wasn't as bad when I was in the universities. It's gotten even worse since then, from what I hear. I mean, all societies have their ideologies and their true believers, and their people who get kind of swept up in ideas that take them far away from simple facts of reality. But yeah, I think our culture is no different from any other. We've got our blind spots, and I think that we could talk about the way all groups retell their history to make themselves the good guys, and so these like leftist, progressive, woke people have taken one particular really perverse spin on that. But
how could they believe it? I mean, look, I like to read a lot. I keep reading about the history of gender fluidity and where it came from, and even the stuff with DEI, and you trace it back to people who arguably are just not that intelligent, right? That they've written and created a false paradigm that then got adopted, as if the CIA themselves just walked in and said, okay, here's what we're going to teach these stupid students, and we'll see how many of these idiots bite off on it. I mean, it feels that demonic when you just trace it back to its roots.
Yeah, well, some people trace it back to communists and the Frankfurt School and things like that, and there's some truth to that. But I think that the real problem with the leftism that's gone completely off the rails is more that it got hijacked by billionaires. Leftism is supposed to be kind of a people's movement to share the wealth more fairly. That's what it was always rooted in. And somewhere along the line, I think what happened was that the billionaires, and specifically we could talk about groups like the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds behind them and so on, those kinds of people in the 1960s, they looked at the craziness that was going on, and you and I would agree it was craziness too. But they said, this could threaten us. It could threaten, the oligarchs' control of the country. So what we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to take some extreme measures to try to curb the excess of democracy. Now, that's their words, not mine. That's the Trilateral Commission mission statement, is to curb the excess of democracy. And so one of the things they did was they put a lot of money into left-wing movements to get them to basically go completely insane with gender issues and sexual deviance and things like that, to push feminism all the way, far beyond any common sense interpretation of what it could be. And so I think that's really where the leftism went completely berserk, was because the big money billionaires felt threatened by the sane leftists. And so they deliberately used their money to drive the leftists completely insane.
Now, you look at where the left, you know what it feels like to me? You see all these videos. It feels like the left has lost control of control. They've lost control of the ability to think problems through. You see people that get arrested that, frankly, that say, I'm non-binary, and then I have mental illness, I have mental health issues, and so you have to let me off from this DUI, or I get to go steal with impunity. Or you have judges that are going, oh, they had a tough time because they tried to cut their penis off, so that makes them special, and now we have to accommodate them and let them commit crimes. It's this justification. It's almost as if this virus has taken a hold of even people who are sensible, and they're biting off on it. Mm-hmm. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're onto something. And I think that the culture, there's actually a way of looking at this in deep history terms, that René Girard, who's a professor at Stanford who passed away several years ago, developed. And he was a Christian, a Catholic, who believed that the great event of all of human history was Jesus's crucifixion. And what that was about was completely overturning the basis of human social order, which is in human sacrifice. He believed that human groups hold together because they get angry at some outsider and they lynch the outsider, and then they deny that they did it. They unite in some kind of big lie, and then they turn that poor person that they lynched into sort of a deity. And this is the basis of pagan religion, which is the basis of almost all human cultures. People hold together with each other because they hate some scapegoated outsider that then they lynch, and then they perversely turn it into a pagan god. So it sounds a little goofy, but actually there's a lot of evidence supporting that this is not entirely wrong. So according to him, basically ever since the message of Jesus, peace upon him, they crucified not just the wrong guy, but according to the Christian interpretation, they crucified God. And so that story says that getting angry at an underdog outsider and killing him makes you the bad guy, right? So it reveals the way that people have this tendency to scapegoat and lynch some scapegoat. And
Well,
ever since Jesus, people have been siding more and more and more with the underdog. Instead of lynching the underdog, they stand up for him. But now it's gone so far that these people have, well, what underdog should we champion? And they start championing, the sexual deviant, the perverse, the crazy, and so on.
But they also do it under the guise of being atheistic, when in actuality it's more satanic. So they embrace this satanic ideology, and then say that they're atheists. And a lot of the melding that's happened today is, hey, the devil's basically saying that it doesn't exist. Now, whether you're a Hindu or a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew, right? There's always been an idea that there is a true north that is, ethical, moral. So when you remove the moral and you say, hey, listen, we're going to redefine what morality is. We're going to say that morality is no longer tied to sexual pleasure, and the sexual pleasure should be universal, and we should teach children to have that sexual pleasure, and we should teach them about perversion, because then we could have pedophilia and all this normalization that happens. We've seen this before. I mean, if you go back in the Bible, it's in the Bible. This type of deviancy led to the near fall of civilization. If you believe that, how I do, that God just came down and just wiped it out, a lot of that has to do with the fact that it got to the place where it went too far, and we're back to that place again. We're back to that place where it went too far, as you say, because free choice has always been the gift that God gave us, right? He gave us the ability to have free choice, to free enterprise, right? But when it goes so far that now no longer do you not only not have free choice, but the free choice that you have is only deviancy, then, I mean, is this not the fork in the road that could lead to not civil war, but I don't want to say this too loudly, but like the end of the world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. You're very much onto something and seeing it as satanic. And I think there really is a satanic philosophy out there that's very powerful, very influential, especially in the leadership circles in the modern world, the Western world. Dr. E. Michael Jones, my favorite Catholic thinker, has written about this, how Milton's poem Paradise Lost has its hero as Satan, and that progressively more and more of the leaders in Western civilization took that idea and pushed it further and further and further. The Marquis de Sade was they make you read the Marquis de Sade in graduate literature classes, like in French literature, because they think he's this great thinker. Well, what is he? He's a sex criminal. He's a guy who sat around getting his jollies from writing about, and I guess to some extent doing these really sick, twisted, sadistic things. That's where the word sadistic comes from. And he's considered a great philosopher now. And the reason for that is that philosophy has that way of thinking, which ultimately comes down to a rejection of God, rejection of morality, and basically saying that just getting the most power and pleasure for myself is the only thing that's worth living for, and I'll do whatever it takes to do that, even including lying, cheating, stealing, and so on. That kind of approach to life, which is, of course, a psychopath's approach to life, has become very normalized among the leadership in the Western world today. No wonder the world's going to hell. Literally.
So doctor, let's talk about this for a minute, because I think it's important to understand that sociopathy and psychopathy, both, are closely related into the fact that they can build a fraternity, and that there is a group of people, as you said, talk about the infiltration of leadership. And I've said it many times that bad people surround themselves with who? Good people or bad people? Well, bad people. And if bad people surround themselves with bad people, and they keep promoting those bad people into positions of trust and authority, now the thirst for greed and power and deviancy becomes overwhelming. And then people that are inside of that environment then become subjected to this social contagion, which is what we're basically dealing with today.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a Polish sociologist named Lobaczewski who wrote a book on this. Yeah. And he saw he saw it happening with communism, that the communist apparatchiks tended to be sociopaths. And he said it's contagious. Once you get enough of them in power, and as you said, they choose their fellow sociopaths. And specifically, I think the sociopaths in power, they choose, smart sociopaths, the ones who don't get caught, right? The dumb ones get caught, and then you could study them in captivity, in prison. And so most of the studies are done on prisoners. But the ones who don't get caught, they end up in the boardrooms, in the tops of the intelligence agencies, and especially the special forces. I mean, if you're a psychopath, you can do a great job in the special forces because you don't have a conscience. So killing a human being is as easy as swatting a fly. And so if your job involves being basically a death squad member who's going to kill human beings regularly, it's much easier if you're a psychopath. And probably in past wars, psychopaths did the vast majority of the killing. There are studies on that show that ordinary soldiers have always been reluctant to kill. And there's a whole training regime that the U.S. military developed after World War II to try to train ordinary people into being the equivalent of psychopaths and just killing on command and so on. And that led to the increase in PTSD among military people. So, but the problem is really the smart ones, the really smart ones who work well with other psychopaths, right? They work well together, even though they're psychopaths. Those are the ones you have to watch out for.
Yeah, because the thing about psychopaths is that they've recognized what they're doing is wrong. They fundamentally recognize it, but they reject it. They reject the fact that they have to do what's right, and then they go through this life's ambition of faking some sort of empathy towards society. And I often say, and this is my biggest problem with the CIA, is the CIA has hunted for these people. They have looked for some of the worst human beings known to man. So you have this entire group of people whose entire world is built on lying and destruction. And then we decided it was a good idea to create an entire organization based on that, and then send them out in the world and say, hey, go out there and do really good. Pinky swear we're going to do good as we destroy the sovereignty of nations. I'm not talking one nation. I'm talking over the last 5 or 6 decades, probably 50, 60, 70 nations.
Yeah. Like Mike Pompeo said, it was a great time in the CIA. We lie, we cheat, we kill, we steal. That's quite a kind of career option there. But yeah, the U.S. empire has killed well over 60 million people since World War II in its different wars and CIA so-called interventions. Some of them were really horrific, like in Indonesia in 1965, when Barack Obama was the child of a CIA stepfather and a CIA mother. The CIA at that period, when Obama was a little kid, was basically murdering more than 1 million people. They would go out and they would capture the people that government, that they just overthrew a government, and now they wanted to capture and torture and kill all of the opponents of that government, and so of the new government. And so they went out and they would torture people and write down all the names that they said under torture, and then go capture them and torture them and get more names and then kill all these people. They ended up killing over 1 million people, torturing over 1 million people to death. That was what Obama's parents were involved in when he was a little kid in Indonesia.
So let's get to. I need to ask you some questions, right? Because I feel like when you talk about, and I agree fully with you. And I only got to read a little bit of your Substack before you came on, and I'm reading some of the things that you wrote, and I'm like, holy crap, man, you're onto something. I often separate, people don't know that much about Israel at all. They think that it's, the Christians are taught by these ebits, these pastors that, you have to bless Israel, you just have to support them 100%, and they can do whatever they want. And, and I'm like that, I don't know where the synagogue of Satan comes into this, and I have to support them genociding entire areas. But we keep repeating the same thing over and over again. One person dies in Israel, they go kill 4,000 people. One person dies, they kill 8,000 people, 1,400 people, and 7 hours later, and then they go into Gaza and wipe out 30,000 people. Square this with me. What patterns are we seeing in the U.S. and Israeli policy in Gaza and the West Bank? And are we going to be able to keep peace? Because we talked about this peace before, probably 30 times. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not even sure where to start with this. It's
it's like
such
soup salad.
Yeah. I mean, where do you start? Do you start with the long history of the Jewish people and the Jewish tribe, and how at some point, maybe starting 1,000 years ago in a very small way and 500 years ago in a really big way, there developed a kind of messianic millenarian extremism that said, okay, all you normal Jewish rabbis have said that we can't go back to the promised land until God does it for us. We're not supposed to even lift a little finger to do it. But then you got these messianic millenarian people, some of them out and out Satanists, like Shabbatai Zvi, who said, we're not going to wait for God. We're going to do it ourselves. And Shabbatai Zvi was a self-proclaimed sort of antichrist Messiah who said, this was like 350 years ago. He said, we need to go back to the Holy Land and commit abominations, and systematically break the 10 Commandments, and so on, and then I'll be the Messiah. And he had the Jewish communities in an uproar, and a huge percentage supported him and was getting ready to move to Palestine. But he was then arrested by the Ottoman Sultan, and he did a fake conversion to Islam to save his neck. But he then inspired more people after that, including Jacob Frank, who said he was the reincarnation of this Antichrist Messiah, Shabbatai Zvi. And the Rothschild family is basically a bunch of Frankists. They worship this Satanist, or they think he's their Messiah, Jacob Frank, and he's going to keep reincarnating. And at one point, he'll come back, and he will lead the Jewish people in conquering and exterminating most non-Jews and enslave the rest. And then the world will become a paradise for Jews. It'll be ruled from a rebuilt blood sacrifice temple standing where the Al-Aqsa Mosque stands today. And this Messiah, after having conquered all of the non-Jews and enslaving them, will see to it that every Jew has thousands of non-Jewish slaves. So this actually, that's not too far from standard Jewish messianic thought. The Jewish Messiah has always been expected to be a military conqueror. And that's why they hate Jesus. Jews have always hated and rejected Jesus because they see him as a false Messiah. And they're waiting for a military conqueror Messiah who establishes Jewish supremacy over the planet. So given that, we can understand why the people who started Israel with the money of the Rothschilds, who were Frankists and Satanists, naturally didn't gravitate towards doing good in the world, to say the least. I mean, Israel has been a genocide forever. That's all it's ever been, is a genocide. It's a plan to exterminate and expel not just the people of Palestine, but all the people between the Nile and Euphrates rivers, and from there conquer the world, exterminate most non-Jews, and bring on the Messiah to rule the world. That's the essence of what Zionism is. That's all Israel has really ever been. The secular nation-state of Israel is a disguise. It's like a false front designed to con the world into letting them do this.
So they're not real Jews, in essence.
Well, they would say they are.
Yeah, so they would say they are, because you can go back in history, but this has been passed down from generation to generation. This synagogue of Satan is a real thing. And the more I read about it, the more I read about this satanic, the fact that they will destroy more. Let me go back a minute. I want to talk about World Economic Forum, August 2017. They come out and say we need a depopulation agenda. We've got to get down about 90%. Bill Gates comes in 2018 and says we need to get our population down 95%. Yuval Noah Harari came out of the Jerusalem, University of Jerusalem. He was a professor there, gay Jew. I call him Jewish guy, really evil guy. Goes with a few other people and creates this depopulation agenda. Bill Gates over the last 2 decades has been going to Africa and injecting people with weird stuff and sterilizing entire groups of people in villages. And nobody said a word about it. Different countries have declared him a war criminal in their own right. So there's certain countries he can't go to. And yet here we are having a conversation about what their agenda is to destroy non-Jews and to enslave the rest. And it feels like that's where we're headed. It feels like that's what's happening right now. 46% of all judges in the United States are Jewish. We could talk about their capturing of the judicial market. And by the way, I'm partially Jewish. So I'm not an anti-loathing individual. I don't believe that these people represent anything other than Satan. So how do I square all this with what's happening right now and not be put in a basket where a majority of the population don't care if you're Jewish, Muslim, Christian, but there is a push right now to take what is not theirs and to create this sense of enslavement. And I feel like that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I should say that the vast majority of Jewish people don't really know much about the history that I just described, the history of this messianic, millenarian, extremist, satanic current that gave rise to Zionism. They believe the cover story, right? They believe that Israel is just a nice nation state, to give the Jews their own country and this sort of thing, especially after the terrible Holocaust. But the thing is, all of these stories, these Jewish stories, all Jewish stories actually, including the good ones as well as the bad ones, have been, told by a kind of an elite within the Jewish tribe, and they've been used to bring Jews together as a tribe because that's the source of the power of the leaders of the Jewish tribe.
Okay, so I just have to ask you this question. I'm not denying the Holocaust existed at all. I'm not doing that at all. Although I've gone back and read lots of things related to what was printed in World War II and after World War II about the number of Jews that were killed and the number of records that were there. And it doesn't match up to 6 million. That's number one. Number two, 25 million Russians died during World War II, 25 million. And yet we give no credence to the fact that 25 million gave up their lives in Russia. So we've created all in itself, just the tens of millions of people that died during World War II. We've created a hierarchy of who and what is important, and we only teach to that, and the rest of the people are just kind of left out. Like and then Russia was our ally in World War II, and yet we had a Cold War with them that lasted decades, and now we're back to the same thing with a group of people that fought, shoulder to shoulder with us in World War II. I mean, make it make sense.
Yeah, it's a little bit like reading George Orwell's 1984, where, we're at war with Oceania, and we've always been at war with Oceania. Wait a minute, I thought we were at war with East Asia. No, Big Brother just told us it's Oceania. And so, yeah, that's how it seems to be. And to what extent the Jewish Jewish power and the Jewish elite is involved in this? Some people focus exclusively on that aspect of things, and I don't so much. I see that as one tribe and ideology among many competing for power. But yeah, I agree with you that the Holocaust narrative, which has enshrined a kind of Jewish privilege in the West, appears to be exaggerated. I'm not an expert. I'm not a historian. I've read a couple dozen books, maybe 40 books on World War II, and then maybe 20 or so involving the issue of this Holocaust, on both the Holocaust revisionists and the people who stand up against them. There are very few of those. It's kind of surprising how little really good work there is that sets out to try to refute the Holocaust revisionists. But after looking into this, I looked into it because somebody was smearing me on my Wikipedia page claiming I was a Holocaust denier, which I wasn't at the time. So that got me curious about why they were doing that. I guess they didn't like my 9/11 truth work, so they didn't want that to succeed. So they just made up this nonsense about how I was supposedly a Holocaust denier, which I wasn't. But that made me curious about the Holocaust, so I did read about it. And I agree with you that I think that's number one, the story is exaggerated, and number two, the real issue here
grossly exaggerated. Grossly exaggerated.
For instance, there's Nick Collerstrom, among others, has done research that leads us to the conclusion that the story of mass human gas chambers probably started out as British war propaganda. And there's a bunch of evidence for this, including the British guy who made up the story, saying after the war, shouldn't we retire this? Shouldn't we admit that this was just our propaganda?
Well, worse is that you had people that said that these were myths, and so they went into these gas chambers being told that they would be for death, and all of a sudden water came out of the thing, and it was used to get rid of a lice issue that they had in the camps. It was an infestation in the camps. And you have other written documents and biographies that were written about people who were in those camps that were from all different walks of life. You have Hungarians, you had the Poles, you had other people that were in these camps that were not Jewish, that were telling stories that were vastly different. And many of those books and writings have been either stricken or taken off the shelf. And you can still find them, but you can't find them on Google. Can't find them on Yahoo, can't find them on any of these places. So they have literally created what's called the dead internet, and making only one narrative and one voice actually the one that you could read about, unless you start getting into these areas where you're like, oh, let me read that book, let me read that book, let me read this book. But you can't find those in the United States. You have to seek those things out. And
it's crazy the way they've cracked down on the internet. And that it's interesting. That's the one issue that's been censored more than any other issue. And I think part of the reason for that is it's so powerful. It's such a powerful sacred story or myth that they need to keep people believing in it. And the problem is that if you do a little bit of reading, you quickly realize that it's far from obvious that the official story of the Holocaust is correct. I mean, just a little bit of reading will get you noticing that there are a lot of problems with that story. So they had to totally purge this from the internet. And it's even Amazon Books and other booksellers, but Amazon most notably, has gone out and gotten rid of all the Holocaust revisionism, which is just outrageous. I mean, even if you support the official version and you're against the revisionists, to argue against them, you need to know what they think, what they say. You need to look at their books. So just by censoring their work to this extent, it's almost like the censors are admitting that they know that they're wrong.
Well, and the problem is, as you dig deeper, and look, I want to be very clear. There is a difference between Jews and Jewish. There's a difference. And if I was wrong, then over an 8-year period of time, the Israeli country, the government, collapsed 5 times in 8 years. This is in recent history, right? It collapsed 5 times. They had to rewrite the Constitution. And there are a large group of people inside of Israel who absolutely despise what I call the Bibi Jews, right? The people that are satanic or atheistic, that are basically making rules up out of nowhere and creating this kind of grip on society, including American society, right? So there's a large number of Jews that are God-fearing Jews that are not on board with what is happening even in Gaza.
Well, unfortunately, there aren't as many as we would wish. Well, Jews, yes, there are. In the United States, the majority of Jews is against the genocide. And nearly half of American Jews call it a genocide. They're really right up in front of the movement for truth about this. So yeah, here in the
United States, they do not like Bibi. these are, and they're really good people. And this is why I get so angry about it's the Jews. It's not. It's a group within it that are using babies and they're using Jews as a backdrop, a shield against all their improprieties. They're literally you shoot them first, right?
Yeah, maybe. I think it's. There are all these individuals and groups who have their own agendas. Mostly they're out for their own power and wealth, of course. And one of those groups, we could say, would be kind of the Jewish tribe. And there are people who profit by having, this Jewish tribalism, by having lots of Jewish people feeling like, they're afraid of non-Jews. They're more comfortable with Jews than with non-Jews. They're naturally going to think, hey, having a Jewish state that can protect us is a good idea. They're going to naturally believe, oh, Hitler was the devil, and they killed 6 million in the gas chambers. They're going to naturally think all that stuff, which makes them manipulable by the more powerful ones who can use this kind of tribal attachment. And certainly we see this in organized crime, right? I mean, everybody knows organized crime is ethnic. It's Crips and the Bloods, or whether it's the Gambini family or the Irish mob that the Kennedys came out of, the most powerful mob is the Jews, the Jewish mob. And, there's a Russian Jewish mob that invaded the United States. Felix Sater is a big name there in the 1990s. And before that, Meyer Lansky was the single most important person in organized crime. He was the banker to all of organized crime in the Western Hemisphere and some of the Eastern. So the ethnic aspect of Jews kind of hanging together works real well for organized crime. And there's been this Jewish organized crime big time for millennia. Because they did stuff that was illegal, that, like lending at interest was illegal. Usury was illegal for centuries. But the Jews were kind of not winked at and allowed to do it. And then sometimes the same people that would do that would be doing human trafficking and narcotics and, alcohol in the Islamic world where that's illegal, or all of these dicey things, prostitution and stuff. That Jewish community kind of had a leg up in all of these kinds of things. The slave trade, of course, the trade for rum, sugar, and slaves, the triangle trade, all of that stuff. So there's a history there of people in that tribe kind of working together outside the laws of the various other countries that they're minorities in. And that history then involved them having to do a lot of lying to keep their businesses going and to avoid problems with the host nations. And so that history of outsider behavior, including criminal behavior, and then having to lie about it, developing a big apparatus of deception, that's served the bad people in that community very well over the years. Now, overall, most people who are born Jewish are not any different from anybody else. And most are just normal, decent people who are brainwashed by their upbringing in the same way all of us are.
But some are not. I mean, some are.
Oh yeah, right.
I mean, I've had a rabbi. I had a rabbi tell me, he's like, Joe, if you only knew. I mean, and I'm like, well, what do you mean if I only knew? And I think this is where the whole satanic, this bloodlust, this synagogue of Satan. I mean, he came straight from his mouth. He said very clearly, he's like, listen, there's a group of people that just traffics women and children like crazy. And you think the organ harvesting is fake? It's real. And where do you think it comes
Israel's from? The capital of organ harvesting.
It's and people disappearing and having their organs. I mean, they'll literally just chop up a child. And this is coming from him, not from me, right? So I don't want to perpetuate any sort of, but I actually thought he was crazy, because this is way back in 2011. You have a rabbi telling you this stuff, and I'm already struggling with what's happening in the Middle East and what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the fact that there was no weapons of mass destruction and millions of people died, and I just wasn't okay with it. I wasn't, right? Because the official narrative in the United States was it was necessary. And you date it back to Madeleine Albright in 1996 saying that, hey, what we did to kill 500,000 women and children was worth it. It served our interests. And I'm thinking to myself, how does 500,000 women and children during a non-war time how does it serve our interests, right? So, but this is a rabbi that's telling me that we're trafficking. This is in 2011, that we're trafficking children and women, and they're chopping up bodies.
Well, a rabbi owns Pornhub. And this gets to us. There is an element in the Jewish religion that lends itself to these problems. And I actually translated a book called From Yahweh to Zion, written by a French historian named Laurent Guyeno. And that book kind of does the whole 3,000-year history of Jewish people, and I think exposes quite a lot of interesting material. But to make a long story short, Ron Unz, another great source on this, he's a brilliant guy from a Jewish background who runs the unz.com website, and has done great work on all these issues, the Holocaust and everything that we're talking about. He's pointed out in his article on oddities of the Jewish religion that among these oddities are the fact that traditionally it was acceptable in Jewish communities to worship Satan, and that some people in the congregation would be worshiping God, and the people right next to them in the synagogue would be worshiping Satan. and it was fine. They were friends, they were, colleagues, they were business partners and everything. It's just like normal to worship Satan in at least a fairly big part of Judaism. And that's pretty weird. And that's like, we couldn't have an imam owning Pornhub. We couldn't have the Pope owning Pornhub or a bishop owning Pornhub, but you can have a big time rabbi running Pornhub. Why is that? Well, there are some issues with this religion. The way it's interpreted its scriptures, they maybe allow too much bad interpretation of their scriptures, and maybe that's why the Talmud has got a lot of bad stuff as well as some good stuff. It's just a record of the rabbis arguing, but a lot of bad stuff.
I'm almost 3/4 of the way through it. It's very long, and it's really bad. It's really bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm honest. I'm dubious about even the Old Testament. I mean, there's lots of good stuff in the Old Testament,
Leviticus,
but as Lauren Guyonneau put it in that book, there's some bad stuff too. And at some point, maybe Jews and Christians and Muslims are going to have to face that fact that our history does have some bad interpretations that really can't be from God. And those, I don't think that's true for the New Testament. I don't think it's true for the Quran, but I think it is true for the Old Testament. And again, the people who stopped with the Old Testament wouldn't accept Jesus, hated Jesus, wouldn't accept Muhammad, hated Muhammad. I mean, those people, they're not all bad, but there are a lot of them that have been open to bad interpretations. And then that tribe has gotten involved in a lot of bad things.
I back in the day, there's a guy that I used to read a lot of his stuff, and his name is Mark Braverman. I probably should reach back out to him, but Mark was a conservative Jew that grew up drinking the Kool-Aid of Zionism, right? And believing that you had to protect this protectionism. And since his early upbringings, and he's a psychologist, but since he's become pro-Palestinian. So you have this really big kind of friction that exists. And this is one of the issues that I have, is that even in the Christian faith, there's problems, right? There's problems with, are we supposed to stone gay people? Are you supposed to, if you work on the Sabbath, there's the stories of the stoning of the man that was working on Sabbath in Leviticus. Like it's written there. I mean, you have the stories of Exodus, and it's problematic, but I look at this and go, how is it that we can ignore just basic goodness and create a justified environment where we can, it doesn't matter what side you're on, like kill Jews, kill Palestinians, whatever it is. This idea that you can have Pornhub and be a rabbi, be a spiritual leader and have Pornhub. How is it that we could allow this in a civilized society? How?
Maybe we're not as civilized as we give ourselves credit for. Yeah, well, I think we have a ways to go to be civilized.
I mean, we're in 2,000 years, we haven't figured it out. Are you basically saying we're not going to figure it out? Because right now, we're as far from, some sort of culmination of an awakening as you can possibly get, I think.
Yeah, well, the hope would be that, it's always darkest before the dawn. But I don't hold out a lot of hope for, these kinds of science fiction solutions that some people believe in. They think AI, some people think AI is going to save us or
kill us.
Kill us is probably more realistic.
Promote the woke mind virus more.
Yeah. I think that religion does have the potential to save us to some extent, but I don't think it's like just the old-fashioned religion in the beliefs, but I think it's the religious experience. I think that religion has always had a number of functions, including holding people together in a society, giving them common sort of language, a language of symbols and rituals to sort of share a kind of religious experience. Well, what is that experience? And I think a lot of people these days either don't have it or maybe they're not getting the right kind of it. And I would like to think that it might be possible that a contagious, good religious experience could sort of sweep through the population, and people could suddenly sort of wake up, realize that their souls or spirits, having a material experience, and that all of this stuff that's been driving us crazy and making us angry and depressed and wanting to harm each other is all just silly, because we're actually already in paradise. I think that was Jesus's secret, really, was seeing that you're already in this kind of beautiful creation of God's, but it's a kind of a shift in consciousness or awareness that you need to be able to recognize that. And once you recognize that, then you have healing powers. Jesus was, of course, a psychic healer, and you see that you don't have to worry about where the next meal is coming from, that God will provide, and you're in a whole different world where people are helping each other. And that's, I'd like to think that there's some way that could happen, and I don't see it happening right at this moment, however.
We got off on a tangent because there's so many more things that I want to talk about, and I like talking about the philosophy of where we're going, because I'm not right, so I'm actually thinking out loud, and I don't think that I'm any more right than anyone else. I just try to evolve and take my feet out of the concrete or the sand and try to just understand perspective, which I think has given me a lot more ability to see, the complexities of good and bad, and who's good, who's bad, so on and so forth, and not necessarily take a side in those things. I have to talk about your recent Substack article. You said that President Trump openly acknowledges he is owned by foreign agents. Help me with that.
Well, I was referring to his talk at the Israeli Knesset the other day.
Yeah.
And his pretty hilarious shout out to Miriam Adelson. Trump has taken hundreds of millions of dollars from the Adelson crime family, which is a Jewish Zionist crime family, big in gambling, not just in Las Vegas, but also over in China and elsewhere. And of course, we all know that gambling is basically money laundering. That is, if you're in the gambling business, putting up casinos, you're not just making money on the cut of the gambling that goes on there, but the reason that you put up that casino is because you're involved with drug dealers and human traffickers and people like that who have these huge piles of cash that they need to launder. So how do you launder cash? Well, you walk into your casino and you buy some chips and gamble a little bit, but not much. Maybe you don't even bother to gamble. Then you just cash in your chips and you get some new, fresh, laundered cash, and you walk out of your casino with fresh cash, right? I mean, that's what gambling parlors do. Anyway, the Adelson crime family, the gambling Jewish Zionist, radically, fanatically pro-Netanyahu, pro-Israel family, has been the biggest funder of Trump. And so Trump's at the Knesset, and he says to Miriam Adelson, something like, "Hey, Miriam, you and Sheldon, your late husband, gave me hundreds of millions of dollars, and Sheldon would come to the White House any time of day or night, asking to get in, and I'd say, Sheldon, that's not how it works at the White House, but I'd let him in." And then Trump goes on to say, and Miriam, I remember, I asked you whether you were more loyal to America or to Israel, and you didn't answer. And I took that to mean Israel. So in that humorous monologue, Donald Trump just admitted that, he was basically bought and paid for by a crime family that's loyal to the state of Israel, not to the United States.
So can I give you a different perspective on that? Because I did watch the same interview.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that interview would be published, and knowing that President Trump has some people inside of his cabinet who, frankly, have done some good things, and we can agree to disagree if you don't believe.
I agree with that. RFK Jr. has done great stuff.
Yeah, but even Stephen Miller is like a walking encyclopedia of information. And so he will bring things up and has done great things on the, to protect not only President Trump, but to push forward his agenda on making sure we can normalize and hold people accountable for bad behavior that has happened historically over decades. But could there also be a different perspective in this, that President Trump was basically shot across the bow, trying to free himself from his obligation to say that, hey, listen, I'm telling you right now, I recognize that I've taken hundreds of millions of dollars from you for whatever reason, right? Business dealing, so on and so forth. He did have the Trump casino in New Jersey, and that he basically was saying that you just can't, that's not how it works. So in this humor, in this whole thing, saying, look, I'm no longer beholden to anyone owning me. So the other side is that people felt like he was obligated. And maybe look, I look at President Trump a little differently, because who in their right mind, who was a bad person, when asked the question, do you think you're going to go to heaven? And he says, no, I don't think I've done enough to go to heaven. I don't think I'm going to heaven. I think I'm going to have a hard time getting into heaven. No, nobody that's a bad person would slow themselves down to that place in their life when they're at arguably the end of their life and do that. And yet I feel like when he talks, he leaves, and I don't believe I don't want to get into the Q stuff, but he leaves breadcrumbs while he tells us these are the things that I'd like to see happen. And then he gets all of this pushback, mostly from the Republicans, not even the Democrats. And then he comes back out and works against it. It's almost like playing both sides while still edging forward and getting done when he needs to get done. Is it possible that he was just letting us know that, hey, they felt like they owed me, that I owed them? And I'm telling them that I no longer owe you.
I hope you're right. And it's some people might say that sounds like a crazy interpretation. I don't think so, because what had Trump just done before that? He had pushed through this ceasefire proposal that Netanyahu's people didn't want.
Right.
And so he had a somewhat difficult audience there at the Knesset. And one way you could interpret his completely bizarre buttering up of all these people, including Miriam Adelson, is like what he's really saying here is, you bought me and I delivered. I gave you the embassy in Jerusalem, which led to this whole genocide. I gave you everything you wanted. I gave you the Golan Heights and stuff. I've done more for Israel than any other president. And then the part that he didn't say is, but it ends here.
I'm done.
Yeah. And I hope that's the case.
So let me tell you why I think that. President Trump is he is intellectually brilliant. The guy literally, and I mean from the standpoint of being able to look, you could hand him a picture, you walk in a room, and he is doing the math. Everywhere he looks, he's doing the math. He's already figured out what's in the room, where his threats are, where they aren't. The art of the deals is actually more, I think, of an instinct than anything else. But the reason why I feel like that may be the case, and again, I don't propose that I have conversations with President Trump, because I don't, right? But I will tell you that one of the things that makes me just wonder is that Netanyahu then came back as strongly as he's ever done, gushing on President Trump, saying he's done more we're going to give him the highest honor in Israel. Because I think President Trump put the hammer down and is like, I'm done. And then they're like, oh crap, we think he's done. So I think that there's a little bit of trepidation on I'll call it the Bibi environment, the Bibi Jews, to say that President Trump is now saying, I've fulfilled my obligation, now I'm going to move in a way that protects the interests of the American people. Get out of my way. I just feel like that's what's happening.
Well, I hope so, because the Bibi party is not going down easily. And even if Bibi Netanyahu goes down, the rest of that country is almost as crazy as he is, or at least the kind of the dominant wing of it is. And they're going to want to keep pushing this. They, as I said, a certain core group of them are dedicated to expanding to everything between the two rivers, which of course would involve invading, attacking, and committing genocide against the people in Egypt in Jordan, in Syria, in Lebanon, part of Saudi Arabia, possibly even part of Turkey. And so that's got, it's obviously a non-starter for the people in the region. And so there's this real threat there for, there's also, of course, a threat to resume this genocide of Gaza, and they're accelerating the genocide of the West Bank. It's a much more slow motion genocide, but it's still ongoing. There's killing, terrorizing, and stealing people's land and stealing people's property in the West Bank. And all of that in preparation for destroying the Al-Aqsa Mosque and rebuilding this blood sacrifice temple to bring on their Messiah, who would be the Antichrist for everybody else. So they're a strong, powerful group in Israel that has all of these completely crazy projects, which, of course, are not good for American national security or for anybody else, really, maybe not even for themselves. And for a long time, of course, every other American president, listened to all their professional advisors. And obviously, we're not going to move our embassy to Jerusalem. Are you kidding? That's going to, you're just asking for, for huge problems there, which then Trump did. And so today, if he's done, number one, this could be dangerous for him because the Zionists, they have a lot of assassins. They're the ones who killed the Kennedys, by the way, and they've taken probably Charlie Kirk as well. So if Trump has turned decisively against them, let's hope that he's got his security team strongly on his side, because they're not going down without a fight. A lot of them still would like to really basically slaughter and expel everybody in Gaza, and then the West Bank, and then go on from there. So the U.S. can stop that, but it's not going to be easy. And I hope that you're right about Trump, and I think it's possible. 50-50. I just don't know whether that's what he's up to, but I hope he is.
Well, and I don't even necessarily think it's to go against Israel. I think it's just to go against this group of people that we'll call it a cartel, because it closely resembles a cartel that has caused a massive amount organized crime, that has caused a massive amount of damage and enslavement of the American people. The private equity firms, by the way, that own Dominion Voting Systems and ES&S that invest in these different companies, they're all Jews. They're all Jewish funding companies. We're not talking about, there is a conspiracy. And if it looks like conspiracy, smells like conspiracy, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's an actual conspiracy, right? And I feel like there's just this movement that's happening right now that, I don't even think it's just President Trump, and maybe he's being pushed by other people, but it's this movement to kind of get to a place where we have this accountability, and it's almost, I don't know if President Trump is going to make it out of this alive, because what you said is absolutely true. The Zionists, they want to kill any dissenting view, period, end stop. And they have done it for decades. They've done it for hundreds of years. This is not, these assassins that you talk about, they're numerous and they're everywhere.
Yeah, and I wonder whether J.D. Vance is independent enough to dissuade them from killing Trump. Sometimes you think maybe the right vice president might be sort of life insurance, or the wrong one would be the opposite. Like Lyndon Johnson had a big hand in helping kill John F. Kennedy.
100%.
So Vance, he seems like a smarter guy than most American politicians. He says more intelligent things than the average politician. Many of those things I would tend to agree with, actually. But on the other hand, he's owned by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is this, gay, Jewish, self-proclaimed Antichrist, practically. And he's the big financier of J.D. Vance. So, again, it's like with Trump and the Adelsons, are these people, they have the guts to bite the hand that feeds them.
So help me work this equation really quick. Like, I have Jewish friends, and they know the way that I see things. I mean, they watch the show. Sometimes they agree with me, sometimes they don't. I have gay friends. I have gay Christian friends. I struggle with seeing these people that I know as being bad people. I can't. I've known some of these people for decades. I mean, my business partner's a gay Jew, and he's the first person I call if I got in trouble. So how do we square it for other people? That I mean, yeah, Peter Thiel's, arguably, I don't know enough about him other than, he's been involved in some pretty questionable things. But how do I personally square that with having these same relationships with these people that he has? With
Yeah, well, I probably shouldn't have led with him being gay and Jewish. That's not the problem. The fact that he was born Jewish, or the fact that he's bought into these crazy ideas about sexual preference, where people define themselves by their inherent vices, which is pretty weird.
I think that's weird. So that,
Yeah.
I don't think that any of the people that, my business partner has his ideas on gender fluidity and things like that, but which I totally disagree with him. But these are some of the things that people struggle with me when they're like, how can you be friends with that person? And I'm like, he's been like my brother for 15 years. How can I abandon that relationship? He's acted the same way no matter where we went. We go to Vegas, we go to New York, we were on a business deal. We do that. He has never violated any of my trust ever. So how do I?
Yeah, I've had tons of Jewish friends too, and some gay friends as well. And yeah, people's the way they're defined by what tribe they were born into or which ideology they bought into, it doesn't necessarily have a whole lot to do about with whether they're a good person or not. But Peter Thiel, the problem is not his sexuality. It's not what group he was born into. His problem is his ideas. Seems like he basically wants to move fast and break things in a very destructive way. Like, his idea is that the idea of progress, of course, was like a religion for progressives for a couple of centuries. It was part of this replacement of Christianity with belief in material progress. So materialists, progressives, secularists who said, let's get rid of religion. This became the new substitute for religion. And so these progressives who want progress through material changes and new machines and things like that, that's going to solve all our problems. Well, people stopped believing in that several decades ago. The postmodern philosophers were the ones who poked holes in that. So, there haven't been very many true progressives now for several decades. Peter Thiel seems like he's looked at this situation and he wants to restore the worship of progress by creating crazy technologies that threaten all of human life, and he'll be perfectly happy if they kill us all off and create an artificial life form that he thinks will be smarter than us. He wants to do something really big with technology that's going to really massively change, if not totally destroy, human beings as we know them. And so to me, that kind of idea, that ideology is really the problem. And so if this is a guy who's funded J.D. Vance's political career, it makes me scratch my head, because a lot of what J.D. Vance has to say, makes more sense than what I hear from other politicians. So maybe I'm misinterpreting Thiel's work. Maybe he's not quite as radical as I thought.
I don't think you're wrong about how radical he is, because it aligns with this World Economic Forum agenda that you hear, people like Yuval Noah Harari talk about, and that guy's just demonic, right?
Yep.
I'm sure you've done readings about him. He's just
No, I've read a couple of his books, and I don't know if I bet if I knew him personally, though, he might turn out to be not such a terrible person if you knew him. Like he apparently, maybe he's just making this up, but I understand he's big on animal rights because he is bothered by the suffering of animals. So if that's true, if he's actually bothered by the suffering of animals, then he can't be a real psychopath. He's just, I think, a normal person with really weird ideas.
But he's called for the mass deletion of 95% of the population. I mean, he's written entire white papers on the idea that we have to depopulate, and what would have to happen. He even talked about how pandemics could serve the better of mankind.
I guess I didn't read that. The books of his, I think I read Sapiens, and then I think one other one. And what I was getting from those books was that he's a hardcore atheist. And so as a materialist atheist who doesn't believe in anything spiritual, doesn't believe that there's any real foundation for morality, he just looks around him at the world and says, well, people are just grabbing for wealth and power. And as everybody is competing and grabbing for wealth and power, inevitably, what they're going to do is demand that scientists produce for them the ability to, let's say, make sure that their children are very, very intelligent, IQ-wise, musical geniuses and things like that. And so the rich people are going to have these really smart, capable children, maybe even test tube baby them, and they're going to become a super class of supermen, Nietzschean supermen. And they're going to look at all the ordinary people that are left behind them who didn't have the money to buy those fancy, IQ enhancements for their, in the zygote engineering, genetic engineering. And so you're going to end up with these two classes, a smaller ruling class that's massively enhanced by technology, and then everybody else that's left behind. And what's probably going to happen is there's not going to be much left for those left behind people to do. And the masters are going to look at those slaves and say, what's the point of letting them continue? Right. So I don't think he was advocating that, at least in the books I read. It's more like he was saying, this is how it looks like it's coming. The problem for me, though, is that he's not appalled by it. He should be horrified, right? But he doesn't sound horrified enough. That's my problem with him.
Well, and it's almost a nonchalant look at societal norms. And when you create a societal norm and say that, that there is no sky is falling, we should probably look at this. This doesn't, this doesn't serve mankind. He's not horrified by it at all. Matter of fact, there's almost like a deviant pleasure that you get from talking to where they feel special, like they're separated from the plebes, so to speak. And largely, I think society-wise, most of us are just don't have a seat at the table. Like we're not the ones that they have chosen that we're going to be saved, unless it is in a place of slavery or enslavement, which is kind of what we're at right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if we transfer that framework to geopolitics, I kind of suspect that the West is run by oligarchs. There's definitely a massively disproportionate number of Jewish oligarchs, but that doesn't mean that they're all Jewish. But they're Jews would say 2% of the American population and maybe 40 or 50% of the oligarchs. And because they network, they're going to have a lot more influence than just being 40 or 50% would determine. So anyway, the West is run by these oligarchs, and they're pretty much on board with this Harari vision of where it's all going to go. A very technologically enhanced oligarchy becomes supermen, and everybody else basically gets flushed down the toilet. And then I look around the world, and that's not the vision we're getting from the BRICS countries led by China. China's Communist Party is really not that communist anymore. They don't believe in Karl Marx anymore. They're actually more Confucian than anything else.
They've evolved.
They've gone back to their roots. And so they actually, their Marxism ends up being just an excuse to care about ordinary people, which actually has more good than bad to it. I think the Marxism of the CCP, and people are going to disagree with this, I think it actually has more good than bad, because what it ends up doing is it gives them this framework that they can use to actually care about ordinary people. So they keep their oligarchs under control.
They also have, look, you could say that to one side, but you still have a problem with the younger people, and you have a problem with the social credit scores of people having to sleep on the streets because they've been basically deleted from society. That all is in China as well. So at one side they said they care about people. The other side is they've done, if you speak out against any sort of group of people, you can be deleted from society, where you're shunned not only from the societal elements, but even from people in your own family.
Yeah, I think China's culture is more kind of group oriented as opposed to individualistic. So when I say they care about ordinary people in the CCP, the way they care about ordinary people isn't that they, think of every individual having these individual rights that nobody should ever violate. It would be a sin or a crime to violate the individual rights, but rather sort of what's best for the most people in the group. And so that does have its downside, because then some of those, individual, especially dissidents and troublemakers like us in that kind of society, maybe they wouldn't care much about really abusing us if they thought that it was better for the group to do so. So that's part of the downside of that ideology, which is certainly there. Yeah, but I think that the Western oligarchs who are so corrupt and so on board with this Harari agenda for technological enhancement of the oligarchs, and the oligarchs inherit the earth, and for some of them, there's a Jews inherit the earth thing too, and the other countries. I don't think China is thinking in those terms so much. I don't think Russia is, maybe a little bit. Some of those, there's some oligarchs in Russia, but Putin got some of them under control, and certainly not in Iran. Iran is. They've got their own ideology, which is, very, what should we say, kind of spiritual, moral, right? They're going to do the right thing even when it hurts their interests, like supporting Palestine and getting bombed for it, getting their leaders assassinated for it. And so those are just some examples, but the whole global South overall, I think, is less dominated by this vision of the Western oligarchs, of having the Western oligarchs take over the world through their financial power and then impose this technologically enhanced oligarchy on the world, and then they basically turn the rest of us into slaves or kill us. And so for that reason, I'm actually kind of geopolitically cheering for the enemies of the United States. Like, that sounds pretty terrible. I grew up loving America until I heard about Vietnam and the JFK assassination in high school. I was all rah, 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 we're the good guys. And then my whole life, it seems like, has been one long education in, oh, we're not the good guys. And now I've reached this point where I really would like to see China, well, I'd like to see Iran and China, and to some extent Russia, prevail against the United States. That's a horrible thing for an American citizen to have to say.
I'm trying to square that, because I want President Trump to be successful. And because, Doc, I grew up poor. I've done very well in my life. But I've had to scratch and claw and overcome obstacle after obstacle after obstacle they put in front of me. And because I didn't have the pedigree or the understanding where I could go back and talk to someone in my family, I left home at 15, right? I, in essence, was the first person in my family to graduate from high school, went to college, did really well, right? And so I didn't have someone to go back to. So in my life, I had to find ways around it. And in essence, I am the epitome of the American dream, right? But a different type of American dream where I didn't have to toe the line. I did everything my own way. So I would hope that wouldn't go away in the United States, but I wish that the opposite, but the other side that I also recognize, and maybe you can help me get through this mentally, I don't see Russia as my enemy. I don't see Iran as my enemy. I don't see China as my enemy. I see the CIA more as my enemy. I see apparatuses of evil that have gripped the United States as my enemy. I don't see the people of Israel as my enemy. I see people like Bibi and people at the World Economic Forum, they're my enemy. So how do you square that with, I want everyone in the United States to have opportunity, but I also want Russia to, I don't want to see Russia and I too share this idea that I want them, and maybe this makes me just too idealistic, right? I want them to flourish. I want the United States to flourish. I want both things to be true at the same time, and I really just want to destroy the CIA. I think they're terrible people. I want to get rid of the people that have killed more people than ever died in World War II, since World War II. And that was all caused by our intelligence apparatus globally. We've killed tens of millions of people over the last 5 decades.
Well, I hope, I would like to think that Trump's movement was really an America First movement. Mm-hmm. A true America First movement would need to first free ourselves from Israeli domination, and then free ourselves from the domination of these oligarchs, and rechart our policies for the good of the American people and for diplomatic solutions to issues with other countries. It's really not, it's not rocket science, but I'm not sure Trump is really on course for all of that. At times he's talked a little bit like he was. He certainly was opposed to the forever wars at a certain point. He was really considered a problem by the CIA and the military, the people that wanted these forever wars during his first term. I read this Bob Woodward's book about Trump, and boy, those his military advisors, national security people, and stuff had to work really hard to convince him, that we needed this huge military going around, continuing these wars in Afghanistan, invading Syria, this kind of stuff. And that, to me, that's, after reading that book, which was designed to make you laugh at Trump and hate Trump, I like Trump a lot better after reading that book than before I read it. So he's got some good instincts. And like you said, I don't think he's an intellectual genius by any means. But when he describes himself as a very stable genius, which everybody laughs about, I think you're right that he does have, he has a certain genius for an intuitive sizing up of things.
It's gift.
I would agree with that.
He sees dead people.
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll grant him that. But does he have a way to size up the real problems? Because here he is blowing up fishing boats off Venezuela, threatening to invade Venezuela, making all of these goofy threats about, to invade Canada and Greenland and Panama. And he's off and on again with trade wars with China in a way that's kind of blowing up the world economy, which isn't going to be good for his re-election chances. And then his relationship with Putin and Russia, he's got kind of the right idea, but for whatever reason, maybe the people around him are telling him the wrong thing. He could have solved that in 24 hours simply by admitting that we were wrong and saying, okay, sorry, we shouldn't have overthrown the government of Ukraine in 2014. We shouldn't be pushing our nuclear weapons up to Russia. Yeah. We're not. Ukraine doesn't belong in NATO. All he has to do is say, sorry, we were wrong, and let's work it out. He could have, but maybe because the people around him are telling him the wrong things, I don't know. But between his erratic economic policies, which are not great for the next, again, his political chances are going to be going down in a nosedive the way it looks because of that. And his erratic behavior with other countries, with bombing Iran, supporting Israel's crazy attack on Iran. Give Trump credit for getting out of the Red Sea in Yemen. That was a good move. And maybe he just did a great thing with Gaza. We'll see. That remains to be seen. But to me, it's a mixed bag. His scorecard is mixed. Certainly, I guess, it has more positives than Biden, but maybe, some negatives that Biden didn't have too. So overall, I don't get the sense that he really knows what he's doing. But I mean, I hope you're right. I hope he does.
It is, I don't have to agree with everything President Trump does. And I think that in large part, when you run a company or you run a country, it doesn't matter. You're going to do things that nobody's ever going to be 100% happy. It's just making sure that you toe the line in such a way that you're making incremental changes that allow for us to have a better life or more stability. And I think some of the things that President Trump has done, removing, I think what's the newest count? It's like 1.4 million people have been removed from the United States. Is that right? It's a big number.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't agree with getting rid of 20 million people in the United States that are here illegally. I don't think it's plausible or feasible. But at the same time, I look at what President Trump is doing, and you said, is he capable of solving the problem? And I should ask this question based on my brain, because my brain tells me we spend so much time focused on the symptom to the problem that we never get to the problem. So we don't address if we address the problems, it'd be one thing, but we're constantly servicing the symptom, which allows the problem to fester and grow and to become more, sustainable by itself.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think you're right that the CIA is a big part of the problem. That agency never should have been created, which is what Harry Truman said. In fact, I think, didn't he publish an op-ed in the Washington Post on the morning after the JFK assassination, regretting having created the CIA? So I think you're right about that. There's some big structural reforms that would be helpful. But I think, the big issue is the U.S. empire has overextended its business model. The big business model for the country as a whole right now is we print worthless toilet paper money and force everybody to accept it at gunpoint. And that's kind of worked for a while, but it's not going to work forever. And so a lot of this jostling with China especially, but the rest of the BRICS countries as well, involves that challenge to the dollar-denominated international order, which allows the United States to have the most weapons and to threaten everybody and ultimately impose our solutions on other countries, and keep forcing them to accept our currency that we just print like crazy without much of a manufacturing base to back it and without the gold and precious metals to back it. So that's an unstable situation. And getting out of that business model into a more sensible business model would be a great idea. And sometimes we get the sense that Trump and some people around him have more of a grasp of the fact that we need to do this than the average politician does. But how to do it without bringing the whole tent down is a real mind stumper. I mean, I don't have a solution to it myself.
So there's a book that's out there, or actually, I like to read about stuff that frankly doesn't necessarily favor me, right? In other words, I don't agree with it, but I read all these books about things that I don't agree with in hopes that I can understand the argument by which they come at things. And I don't have the answer for what's going on in our country other than the fact that we have to reject evil. We have to wholeheartedly reject it and get to a place where we have a sensible approach to everything. And that's going to be very painful because we've allowed this evil to thrive. And you talk about, prostitution, you talk about, some of the basic things like, that you should be able to put a cap on, like not putting sexualized books in children's sections at second grade, right? So the painful part of this is you're going to alienate a lot of people. But if we don't do that, the outcome is that we continue this downward slide, and then it's unrecoverable, right? I mean, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I think the moral core of the country is maybe kind of the inside problem. I describe the symptoms of the bad business model, but maybe we got into having a bad business model in part because we had this moral rot and corruption that's been going on. How to fix that, though, I don't know. Since the birth control revolution of the 1960s radically decoupled, sexuality from procreation, and had a whole lot of people suddenly thinking, wow, sexual pleasure is just like candy, whatever. And that broke up the human relationship element of sexuality that's always been tied in with the reproductive family. And that happened, because of the technology in part, but also, let's face it, there was an ideology. The oligarchs, again, a lot of them were given money to these people who actually wanted to bust up families and create this new morality. And how to undo that in a world where, we have, it's our technological world today it's not the world of our ancestors. And our birth rates have declined to the point that we're not reproducing ourselves anymore. These societies are imploding all over the world, and everywhere where the countries are getting richer, their birth rates are going down below replacement. So how to fix that when normally what you would have to do is somehow get people back to believing in God or believing in the kind of religious worldview of their people. And that means you sacrifice for something bigger than yourself, which you have to do to want to have very many children. I mean, children are a pretty big sacrifice. And for women, maybe even more than for men in certain respects. That's why they say that when, free the women to do whatever they want, and then the birth rate plummets because a whole lot of women will just go off and do something else. So somehow getting things back on track where we can return to traditional morality and have traditional families and religions. It's again, it's hard to see how it's going to happen. Aside, I held out the possibility of some kind of spiritual awakening, a contagious spiritual awakening, where people suddenly recognize that we're spiritual beings. But that without that, I can sort of see where these pessimists and even these sort of dystopian pessimists who actually like their dystopias or don't mind them too much, like Harari, are seeing things all continuing to go to hell. And of course, it could all go to hell, like just basically most people end up dying off, and then the survivors have to go through barbarism again to slowly crawl back towards civilization. That could easily be the way it plays out.
We're in that quandary of things of how do we get back to a place where, even if we can't get to a place of absolutism when it comes to morality, if we can get to a place where we have accountability and consequences in a lawful society, right, which will take care of some of it. I mean, if you can put the mechanisms in place where people can yearn for something that actually gives them some normality, then I truly believe that if you release the power back to the people, if we get rid of machines, mail-in ballots, have people vote in elections that aren't stolen, right? And in large part, I'm going to tell you right now, every election in the United States is fraudulent. Every one of them, every single one of them is fraudulent, right? And I say that as a system architect, it's fraudulent. Like every part of it is fraudulent. Anytime you have no transparency, you have fraud, period. But if you get back to that, it will take decades to get back there. But I think the people will naturally get back there because they'll be given the mechanisms by which they can vote people who are more ethical into those positions of trust and authority.
Yeah, I want to give you a big shout out of appreciation for your work on election integrity. I looked around a little bit on the internet about you, and I noticed that the mainstream media just had to pile on you because you recognized the problem with our election system.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a huge credit to you. That was a huge, an outpouring of praise, because that issue has been huge. Well, certainly at least forever. Of course, American elections have always had their issues because any election determines who's in power, and power involves money and so on. And people, if you don't set up a very strictly controlled system, people are going to try and game it, right?
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right that voting machines were actually designed to be gamed. They're designed to be hackable. It's disgusting.
100%.
It's crazy. How could we be voting on these machines? And I saw this early on, and it was weird. It was the Democrats and the left-leaning people who saw this back in 2004 when it really got going, right? After the 2000 hanging Chad fiasco, they brought in these new voting machines for like 2002, 2004 elections, and they stole the 2004 election for Bush. They stole Ohio with massive vote fraud, and they stole a lot of votes around the country as well. Actually, John Kerry probably won that election with a landslide. He probably won 53 to 47% nationwide. Big victory in Ohio. They stole it with rigged voting machines. And a few people, mostly on the left and Democrats, noticed this problem and made a big stink about it, but the whole media just shut it down. You're not allowed to notice that these machines are designed to be hackable. Why would you build black box voting machines? That makes no sense. Why wouldn't you build transparent ones?
Well, transparency breeds goodness into your community, because then the community settles into a normalcy that gets created and reinforced at every level, whether we're talking about primary education or even how we treat the nuclear family. But what's happened today is that we've allowed for this deviancy and this lack of, they first started, by the way, it happened around the same time in the early 2000s, where it's your truth, just follow your truth, not the truth. And so they were able to manipulate and capture the vocabulary, capture the vernacular of how things are used. And from there, they were able to justify doing some really bad things. And when the media attacked me for the elections, I wrote a model in December of 2020, and I was like, listen, they're going to steal the runoff election for the Georgia runoff election. I'm going to tell you how it's going to be done. And I wrote a model, and I took it to Washington, and I met with counsel for Pompeo, and he was sweating in that room. And I looked over at him, and I looked at everybody else, and I was like, he knows. So both sides know. Both sides know exactly what they've done in stealing the elections. And both sides are complicit in that behavior. It's the haves and the have-nots. right? And if we don't get rid of the black box, then the American people have no voice. But what the mainstream media and what this judiciary that's rotted to the core has done is that they've created a fool's gold and said that the gold is the gold standard. And we look at it, and all you have to do is scratch it, and we know for a fact it's just a bunch of coal that they've painted the gold color. It's garbage. And so again, they've taken big shots at me, which is why, by the way, I'm so hesitant. And I wasn't pushing back on Peter Thiel at all. I wasn't at all. What I was saying is that I struggle because I know good men. I know people that are Democrats that are that are good men and good women, and yet, they're lumped in with this group of people where I think it's just a disgusting apparatus that's self-serving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think there are some decent people on different sides, but I think you might be onto something with fixing the elections. That is, one solution that's been proposed would be going back to hand-counted paper ballots. There's one school of thought that says you can't build a voting machine that's not that couldn't conceivably be hacked. You could certainly make them better than most of them are now, right. But the one way to make sure that you've got fair elections is the hand-counted paper ballots. So doing that might be one way of getting people back in sort of trusting their system. So, and at one point I was thinking Trump might actually do that. He made some remarks along those lines, and certainly after the 2020 election, it seemed that election integrity was going to be a big issue for him. It's too bad that he didn't. I mean, had he pushed that hand-counted paper ballots issue, that would be right up there with what RFK Jr. has been trying to do at HHS as an example of something good coming out of this administration.
Yeah, and I look at that. You talk about JFK. I mean, see, RFK, Bobby Kennedy being a good guy, and he's a Democrat. Tulsi Gabbard doing her job and doing it well, she's a Democrat. So there are really good people. We just have to be really careful how we, who's doing what.
I think Bernie Sanders is probably not too bad of a guy too, really.
He's a funny guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think he's sincere. He games, he plays the game a little too much for my taste. Like he's not like a hardcore truth seeker. But I mean, they all have their downsides, right? RFK Jr., his whole relationship with the Zionists and the genocide is completely insane. Like, what's that about? I mean, they killed his father. I mean, they set up a hypnotized Palestinian patsy to murder RFK Jr.'s father, RFK Sr., and make sure he didn't become president, because had he become president, he would have tracked down the killers of his brother JFK, and that was the state of Israel. So, it's weird to have RFK Jr., whose father and uncle were murdered by the state of Israel, being such a fanatic, pro-Israel fanatic. And you wonder, is it Stockholm syndrome? Is he got some kind of psychological problem with that? Or is he conscious? Does he really know what's going on, and he's just overacting, as a way of staying out of trouble? I don't know.
You keep the devil close, so you know exactly what his next move is.
He keeps Rabbi Shmuley close, that's for sure. Yeah.
Who's a terrible human being.
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah. He owns what, a dildo company? Isn't that what he owns?
Yeah. It must be like it's a normal thing for rabbis to be into that business. I don't know.
Deviance. Well, I tell you what, I just want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank you for allowing me to kind of, throw up on you as well and just get your perspective on things. It does help me quite a bit. I think it helps other people that are struggling with kind of where things are as well. So I'm going to give you the last word, but thanks again. I'd love to have you back on again. And I'd love to have you back on again talking about the JFK assassination and 9/11. We could just do a whole show just on that, each one.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I'm not exactly a super duper expert on both of those cases, because I kind of stopped looking deeply into the JFK thing in like early 1990s when Oliver Stone's film came out. I said, okay, that's people know now. But 9/11, yeah, I spent a lot of time looking into that. I'd be happy to. So yeah, well, thanks, Joe. It's been great talking. And like I said, I really admire your courage in standing up on election integrity, which is such an important issue, and it's so obviously important and so obviously correct. And then, of course, the media is going to smear you if you talk about it.
They did quite a bit. I got a call yesterday that said, Joe, they're going to try and cancel you again. And I go, what for this time? They're like, well, you won't stop talking about the Bibi Jews, and you won't stop talking about the machines and mail-in ballots, getting rid of them. And I was like, well, I've done that for 5 years. Why? You've already canceled me so many times. It's just crazy. But they literally go into each one of these tech companies and they're like, listen, we need you to dial him back on each one of these platforms. And you can see it happening in real time. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, tell me about it. I've been knocked off a lot of platforms myself. Most recently, I had most of my income taken away when they canceled me on Stripe, which was my Substack income.
Why?
But yeah,
why did they do that?
They wouldn't give me an explanation. I just got an email saying blah blah blah. Your business is not. It doesn't go along with our policy. We see too much risk factor or something like that. They said, and I got back to them and said, it's not a business. I'm not actually giving anybody any product in return for the money. It's just a donation platform. I'm a writer, and the people who want to support my writing just give me gifts through. So it's not a business, and so nobody could ever complain that they didn't get something from me because I don't give them anything. It's just donations. What could be the danger? Well,
how is that even legal? How? I don't understand how.
Yeah. Well, it's before that I was canceled by GoFundMe and Patreon and YouTube and on and on and on and on and on. So yeah, they don't like people who talk about certain topics. 9/11 is a big one. The Jewish and Zionist power is a big one, a really big one. And of course, the Holocaust is a huge one, but I don't talk about that very much. But even just mentioning it once in a blue moon, I guess, is terrible. But anyway, yeah, you asked about last word for me. So my websites are kevinbarrett.substack.com and truthjihad.com. Those are the two main ones.
All right. Dr. Barrett, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. God bless you, and I look forward to having you on again.
Well, thanks, Joe. God bless you too. Keep up the great work.
All right, take care. There's times where I get more out of the conversation than I anticipated. This is one of those times because I got to work through some of the things that go through my head on a normalized basis. I'm not going to go as far as to say that the Holocaust doesn't exist. I'm not going to go as far as to say that Jews are our big problem. But we have a cabal issue. We have a cartel issue, an organized crime issue in our country, and it's infected all aspects of our leadership. At the same time, we have to be, I wish we could just be reasonable. I wish we could get to a place where we didn't have to operate or allow extremes to operate on both sides with such, polarity. They're completely opposites from each other. So, I don't know. We're going to get to a place where we get to the bottom of the truth. We're going to make sure that the people that have stolen our elections are held accountable. We're going to make sure a lot of things do happen, but we have to be consistent and we have to continue to speak up about those things. Just to kind of wrap up a bunch of the things that I want to talk to you about. First of all, if you haven't seen what gold prices are doing and what silver prices are doing, and even what copper prices are doing, I keep telling you guys, go to untamedgold.com. Just have them send you a packet, right? Have them send you a packet and buy what you can. And if you can't buy, you can buy coffee. If you buy coffee, you can buy $5 coins of copper. And it is, let me see what copper price did today. Copper right now is at $5. It's going to go up. Silver today is at $54. I think $54, $53.80 or $54. Gold is up nearly 4% today. 4% today. 10% just in the last 5 days. Something is happening. Put yourself in a better position. Gold price at $43.25. I keep trying to tell you over and over and over again, invest, 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 invest. So I'm going to tell you again, invest in gold and silver. Go to untamedgold.com. All right, let's talk about some stuff. And I'm just asking you to go to untamedgold.com, have them send you a packet. Have them send you a packet. And if you're like sitting there going, I don't want to send it, Okay. You cannot get yourself out of a position. It takes time to make money, but you got to be willing to put yourself in a position where you can make money. You can put yourself in a better financial situation. All right. So can we talk about some of the things that are happening that we talked about before? Soup salad. AOC is a nutball. Let's start at the beginning. AOC, and I just want you to hear what this woman's got to say. Play this first cut.
And it is clear to communicate that as an individual. Now, to the question earlier as well, when they talk about Republicans and their success online, they have been successful because they have also been very clear, especially digitally, about what they believe. That women are inferior, that they do not deserve equal rights, that they believe that LGBTQ Americans are subhuman, that they believe and are circulating disgusting racial and white supremacist messaging that they are able to get away with digitally and online. And they are able to radicalize and target and exploit a generation of young boys, in particular, away from healthy masculinity and into an insecure masculinity that requires the domination of others who are poorer, browner, darker, or a different gender than them.
Did you see the woman that was shaking her head? Yeah. So that's someone that literally had an experience, any experience. And this is what you call like Stockholm syndrome / social contagion. You get someone up on stage, you have them, by the way, I want you to know something about AOC and Bernie Sanders and what they're allowed to do. They are immune from prosecution from lying to the American people. They can lie with impunity at all times. But did you hear what she just said? Every problem that you have is caused because every problem, every obstacle in your life, everything that happens is because you're brown or black. Every problem that you have, you're seen as subhuman by President Trump and anyone that is on the right. They are categorically creating an army of victims that want blood because they're being lied to. It should be illegal. It should be illegal to do the things that they're doing because no one believes that that gay people are subhuman. Nobody believes that. And if you do believe that, something's wrong with you. You need Jesus. Nobody believes in any of their mind. There's no white supremacy out there. You know what it is? It's the opposite. It's a direct attack on white people. You want to know what's happening in our country? The demonization of white people is no better than the racism you get against black people or brown people. But if you alienate white people and then you say that I'm a Jew and I'm not white, I'm my own race, then let's talk about what we just talked about before. You can capture an entire society. You can kill off as many people as you want because you get to hide behind anti-Semitism. You're not allowed to say a word about me. While saying that you're helping black and brown people when you have them exterminate and create genocide against an entire generation and then call it a right. There is a group of people in this world who are satanic, that are turning like she did. I believe she's satanic. I believe AOC is a demonic little bitch because she can't tell the truth about anything. About anything. Do I think they're white supremacists? Yes, I do. There are. But what you're doing now is you are rotting the brain of people by creating a story that's not there. You are walking past illegal behavior and saying, hey, they're just trying to get along. While watching, we saw a guy that was arrested 39 times, stabbed a woman to death. We see it every day, crimes that are committed by people that are here illegally. And we're supposed to say, oh, let's bleed my heart for them. I don't bleed my heart for anyone except for Americans because I'm America first. And I don't care if you're brown, black, purple with webbed feet, don't care. What I care about is if you're an American, I should be standing up for you. You are my brother and sister, period. But what she said is dangerous. It's dangerous, it's reckless, it's terroristic, and frankly, that should be prosecuted. That's not free speech. That's an incitement of hate and violence against people with lies. And if that's anything, it is directly proportionate to what they actually are on the left-hand side. But here's the AOC when asked about taxpayers should cover health care for illegals in the U.S. This soup salad. Let's go ahead and play it.
Can I ask you on this to follow up? Because you said that it is federal law that people, undocumented immigrants, can't get Medicare, Medicaid, the Obamacare subsidies. Do you believe that should be the law, though? Or do you think undocumented immigrants should have access to federally funded health care?
I believe personally that health care is a human right. I believe that every person should be able to go to the doctor. But I believe that right now, federal law is the federal law. And that absolutely, that U.S. citizens and people who pay into our programs deserve to be covered by these programs. And I mean, once again, I do believe that the federal laws that we have on the books are appropriate.
But if you could choose, do you believe that should be changed?
Pardon?
If you could choose, do you believe that the federal law should be changed?
I don't. I believe in a single-payer healthcare system where if you go in and you need a doctor, you can get the medical attention that you need.
Okay, let me just...
You're a retard. You're a freaking retard. You mean like the system that you have up in Canada? See, this is why there's no common freaking sense in this country. There's none. Single payer, where if you need something, you can go get it. Let me just tell you what happens in Canada. You have an ailment, they give you two choices. Let's say it's a comorbidity that was caused by vaccines that you've been pumping into your body for the last 2 decades. And for somebody to say there's no correlation or causation, you're just a retard too. But let's hypothetically say you're up in Canada and you go in and you have a comorbidity. They say, okay, option A over here is we'll get to you in 6 to 9 months. Option B over here, option A is that. A B over here is euthanasia. We can go in here, we'll put you in this little pod area, walk over here, and we'll just kill you. How about that? How about you just off yourself? That's single payer health care. And if you think I'm wrong, go up in Canada and see what they do up in Canada in order to get health care. They have to pay extra for it. So you have this nationalized health care, and then right next to it, and by the way, if you're an Indian, oh my gosh, you get the best health care ever. You get to step to the front of the line because white people, you don't belong. If you're Canadian, generationally Canadian, get the hell out of here. Now we got Punjabi over here and needs he needs his penis taken off. We're going to put him at the front of the line. That's the reality of what we're dealing with. And you talk about the fact that illegals can't get Medicaid or Medicare. They can, and they do, and they have. By mandate, they've had it. She's lying. So not only do you have the Communist News Network and CNN, but you got the CIANN. You got it run by a bunch of douchebag retards that can't tell the truth if they were standing on it. But they want to say that, hey, they're the virtuous ones. They're the ones telling the truth. They're not virtuous. These people are flat out stupid. But you know what? They're not stupid. They don't even believe what they say. And I'll tell you how you know it. AOC, if you go back and watch that, just hit the reverse button, go back and watch it. When she's asked the question again, she has to reset her head and said, pardon me? Because she had to come up with a way to finish off what she thought based upon not degrading what they're currently in the government. Because if she said too much, she would have to admit that they do get Medicare and Medicaid. And by the way, they don't not only get Medicaid and Medicare, they can go into a hospital and they've gamed the system. They could have a hang toe on their foot and they'll say, I have chest pain. Go to the front of the line. The hospital pays for it. The hospital gets incentives for taking care of illegal people. And they get dollar per dollar tax credits so they don't have to pay taxes. And the American people foot the bill. Period. Well, here's another one. This is Speaker Johnson listing off why the Democrats, and I said this at the beginning, is the Democrats or Republicans responsible for it? In large part, both are responsible for it because they've allowed for elections to be stolen and for soup salad to become the lay of the land. But this is Johnson talking about the demands that these anti-American, treasonous, seditious traitors have to end the shutdown of the federal government. Let's go ahead and play it.
And they would send $500 million to liberal news outlets by refunding the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. It would also restore up to $5 billion of American taxpayer funds for wasteful spending for international projects. Here's a couple of examples. This is in their legislation, their counterproposal on the CR to keep the lights open, this is what they want to do. They want to spend $24.6 million of your hard-earned dollars as a taxpayer for climate resilience in Honduras. They want to spend $13.4 million for civic engagement in Zimbabwe. They want to send $3.9 million for LGBTQI plus democracy grants in the Western Balkans. They want to spend $2.9 million of your dollars for desert locust risk reduction in the Horn of Africa. And $2 million for, quote, organizing for feminist democratic principles in Africa. We are not doing that.
Okay. These people justify their bad behavior. And I come on here and I tell you every day that I am prepared for whatever comes my way. I'm prepared for it. And that I have already made a decision in my mind how I'm going to handle certain situations. I train to it. I carry a gun everywhere I go. Everywhere I go. And not only do I carry a gun, but I make sure no matter where I am at any time that I'm prepared to use it. It doesn't matter to me. I've already made the decision. And I think that everyone knows that about me. And they say, oh yeah, this guy is completely unhinged. I am the least unhinged person you are going to find. Least. I'm a guy that understands the reality of what I face going into this kabuki theater with Coomer. I know that if we don't get rid of machines and mail-in ballots, that our country is done and we are all going to die. I know the reality of seeing what's happened to other nations because I've been there. I spent time in nations that frankly none of you would want to go. You would never want to go there. I have seen people die of the common cold. I saw a kid get run over by a train in one of the biggest slums in all of Africa. A little kid, 2 years old, walked in, boop, boop, run over by a train at 9:30 at night in a place that frankly most people wouldn't even go at 9:30 at night. So I am absolutely 100%, I am not trying to lecture you. I am telling you right now that I've had to come to grips with the reality of what's in front of me. I don't like the CIA. They don't like me. You got Sam Faddis, that lion sack of shit, who flew out here because Sidney Powell wanted him to interview me, went to a restaurant, sat there, I told him everything that happens, and that piece of shit ran back and said, oh, at worst, he's embellishing. I didn't embellish a fucking thing. I watched as these little shitbags on both sides of the aisle have done egregious things to the American people, all while saying, Joe, it's complicated. Well, fuck off. It's not complicated. You're just a bunch of weaselly little cowards. But nothing compares to what I'm about to show you. Nothing. And if I don't get any more of these stupid phone calls from spam, where these political calls, enough. We have an entire year. Fix the elections and the mail-in ballots, and then I'll give you my money. And throw Coomer in jail and Polis in jail. Throw those people in jail, then you get my money and my time. I'll work for it for free. I'm about to show you something that makes my blood boil. It makes me want to be a vigilante. I'll be honest, it makes me want to vigilante justice. And I know that God does not want that for me. I know He has prepared me to do certain things. He's prepared many of you to do certain things. But I want to show you this. Libs attack TikTok. Kendra Briggs, this piece of trash judge on the left, this scumbag trash heap of a judge, gives no jail time to the teens responsible for brutally attacking the Doge employee Big Balls. They were sentenced to probation, and the Judge Briggs instead says her goal was to rehabilitate, not to punish. I want to go back to what this piece of shit did and what the other piece of shit judges, these fucking rotted to the core, communist, seditious shitbags did to the J6ers. I want to take it all the way back there, and I want you, and you know what? I'm sorry, Lord, I apologize. I said I wouldn't cuss, but you know what? I'm going to tell you something. That was the picture of the young man that was beaten bloody. These pieces of shit beat him bloody. And this scumbag piece of garbage judge, Biden appointed, auto pin appointed piece of shit, let them just go and said, oh, we want to rehabilitate. Your entire system, the Bureau of Prisons, is designed to torture people and to steal money from them. That's the whole system. There's no rehabilitation. Where is that? Show me where they have a system where you could teach them a trade. Show me where you have a system where they can literally go in to a jail and they can better themselves so when they get out, they can be a productive part of society. You don't have it. You give them meatloaf and a bunch of other things and let them build shanks in the back and have your prison guards run drugs through like it's candy. And everyone knows this is the way it is. Everyone. Everyone knows that that's what the Bureau of Prisons is about. Everyone knows what they did to Tina Peters. 9.5 years for uncovering election fraud. And this piece of shit judge lets guys that brutally beat a kid. But she's going to let it go because he's white. Right? He's white. Kendra, that piece of shit. Kendra Briggs is nothing but a terrorist. She's not a judge. She's a terrorist. She's a lawless scumbag piece of shit. That's the reality. And that, by the way, that's what the judiciary is. She is the judiciary. She is the put he, her, him on your sign as a judge. Say that I'm for the rules while breaking every rule along the way. That's what we get. Is a judge that will let a kid get beaten and then say, let's not worry about the kid because he's white. Let's not worry about the kid because he's a conservative. We don't care what you do to them. We want to treat them, you just heard what AOC said, subhuman. And you tell me what they're doing isn't exactly what they say the right represents. These people are demonic. Demonic. Yeah, I'm angry. Apologize. I apologize to you guys. I apologize to you guys in there because you have to bleep out all this stuff for the audio version. I apologize. You should bleep it out for the next version too when you put it out there. We put it out there, by the way, on repeats. You get the rerun. I did that because I keep getting blocked on Rumble and everything else. They literally say, oh, you know, Joe, we're doing you right. Well, they block people from being able to watch my videos. The only one that's growing dramatically is actually the website. So I want to thank you guys for going there. All right. This is President Trump responding to the decision for probation on the offender of the assault of Edward. Remember what I said, how I feel about things. And then, by the way, that's from a guy that has mentored young men and has mentored men that did 10 years of a 20-year sentence and said, look, and this does not define you, break off that rearview mirror, and let's look forward to how you can be a good person, a good man. Play it.
Violent crimes, sir. Here in D.C., a judge has given the two teenagers that beat up ex-Doge staffer Big Balls probation.
It's incredible.
And no jail time. Is this justice?
Jeanine Pirro is doing a fantastic job, and she is beside herself because you have these radical left judges that they beat the hell out of this guy. And there was many people against this one guy who was really trying to protect his girlfriend. He didn't want his hooded over the door but they really beat him up badly. That just happened, right? Yes. Wow, that's terrible. I think the judge should be ashamed of himself.
Herself.
That's a big problem. You know, they can do their job and then they go into a court and the people are protected by these, I don't know where they come from. Where do these people come from? Where do the judges come from? I want to compliment on behalf of Pam and Todd and all of us because, Cash, I think that Jeanine has done a fantastic job. And the case I heard was like flawless. It's a flawless case. They have them on tape. They have everything. And then a judge gives them a little probation. These are rough guys. And they're young. And if that happens, they're going to grow up. They're going to be real bad. They're going to cause a lot of problems. Yeah, please. Go ahead.
So, Georgia Gore has just gotten back.
How do you create accountability when you have a captured society? How? How do you go through life? You know, I got a notice from the IRS for the company that says, oh, you owe us $3,900. And I looked over at it and I was like, what? 1065. Yeah, it doesn't have anything in that area. They just make it up. They just make it up. Just make it up. We're just going to charge you whatever we want. We have a lawless society. Good people get taken advantage of by a system that is designed to destroy them. And the FBI is supposed to be looking out for the American people. The federal government is supposed to be looking out for the American people. The state governments are supposed to be doing the American people right, but they don't at all. You guys better buy guns and you better buy ammo and you better get ready. You better. Because if they can just let these guys out and just beat this kid. And you saw the picture. Put the picture back up again. Put the picture back up. He got beat bloody. That's his blood. They just beat him. That's the kid. That's Edward, a guy that literally came in to do good inside the government. And that criminal piece of shit on the left, yeah, that's the one that let him go because we're going to rehabilitate him. They should have gotten 20 years. They targeted him, and they did what gangs and what cartels do. You better go make sure you build a fraternity. And by the way, I had this meeting yesterday in Illinois. You go be building a fraternity in your area. I'll come in. I'll fly in. You just let me fly in, and we will go through what that fraternity looks like. We should have fraternities all over the country of men that are willing to stand up. And when these lawless people show up, you just make a phone call. You make sure 50 of your brothers show up. That's what we need right now. We need a fraternity of men. We need to get back to biblical fraternities of men. And then we can hold everyone accountable, including these crooked piece of shit seditious judges. So let's see what happens in the lawlessness of Chicago. You ready for this? All right, play the first one.
Look, all the protesters showed up.
And right now, what are we specifically looking for as we are driving around?
We are inside this plaza called Elgin. So we have a lot of targets that frequent this area. All right, go ahead. We'll take it down. Come on, let's take it down.
Look, now you have all the protesters coming. He's right there. Look, all the protesters showed up. Whoa. Jeez. There they are, those two right there. Those two right there.
That lady hit our car, so if we had like more people, she would have got arrested.
Really? Yeah,
But it's only-
multiple people hit the car.
Here we go. Here's some these terrorists that rammed into ICE agents. Let's go ahead and play this next cut.
Stop physically. DHS says one of the, or both of them, I should say, are Venezuelan and in the U.S. illegally. One of them had an order for removal from 2024. A crowd formed up, and Chicago police say they started throwing rocks. So tear gas and other crowd control weaponry was used to disperse the people. Meantime, the fence surrounding the ICE facility here in Broadview, Illinois, is down. It came down with an hour to go before the court-ordered midnight deadline. The mayor of Broadview acknowledged that the protests here get out of control, so the area on the southwest side of the ICE facility has been declared a no-protest zone, primarily to keep people from walking into traffic. The demonstrators are now restricted to a small zone here on the northeast side, and the protesters don't like it.
It seems like they're trying to push us out or trying to make it so the protest is less effective. I'm not the only one that feels this is unconstitutional. People are going to get more angry, and they're going to come out.
You see this guy standing up for any veterans that are committing suicide? No. You see him maybe giving some of their money to these illegals? No. No, they get paid by NGOs, no-show jobs, money under the table. They get paid to actually sit out there in the street. They don't have jobs. They're professional protesters. They get paid by this group of nonprofits that are out there and federal programs that give money to people so they can pass out money and do damage to the American people. Most Americans, by the way, don't care about anything other than let's take care of America first. Here's chaos in Chicago when a large crowd interferes with federal work in a ICE enforcement. How come no one's at work? Let's say it. Go ahead and play it.
Herman, get back! Alma. Where is she at? I don't know.
Did you guys see that baby? Why in the world would you bring a baby to a protest? Why would you bring a baby to a protest? What the hell's wrong with you? This is what I say when you hide behind innocent people because you want something bad to happen to your own children. Something's wrong with you. But you got to see this. Governor Pritzker, a big slob. ICE and Border Patrol agents are barred from making civil arrests of illegal aliens in Chicago courts. I want you to know what sedition is. Okay, you know what sedition is? Sedition is doing things to basically overthrow the American government, the federal government. And that's what they're doing because this is an illegal act. You're here illegally. Play it.
Cook County Circuit Chief Judge Timothy Evans is barring civil arrests of people when they are at county courts. Evans said in a statement, quote, access to justice depends on every individual's ability to appear in court without fear or obstruction. Our courthouses remain places where all people, regardless of their background or circumstance, should be able to safely and confidently participate in the judicial process.
Judicial process is that you're removed if you're here illegally. It's pretty simple. Now, I don't agree with going after just law-abiding citizens. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with, by the way, even going after people that have been living here for years, that are here illegally, that have established themselves in the community, never gotten in any trouble, that go to work. You can hate me for it. I think it's unrealistic. But that's not what's happening. People are being taken out of the country. because they're on a list. And the list says you have a ejection order, and the ejection order is pretty simple. You did this. You committed this crime. I'm going to tell you right now, there's not a country in the world you can go to today that if you do a DUI in the UK, you're going to go to jail for a year. You're in jail for a year. I'm just there on vacation. When you sign that little form, if you don't pay your fine, if you drive in the district of London, because if you drive in that area, you have to pay a fine because you're a car. For certain hours, you can't drive your car there. If you do drive your car there, it's a penalty. If you don't pay it, when you come back, they will arrest you at the airport. You go directly to jail till you pay the fine. If you commit any crime, let's hypothetically say that you accidentally push someone and they fall and hurt themselves, and you're in France, you're going to jail. And you'll be barred from the country. Now, if you're an illegal there, you can do whatever you want, but if you go in there and you're a law-abiding American citizen, you're going to jail. You think I'm kidding? Go try it. But in the United States, you have these wackos that want these people to be here because they want the chaos that ensues. But if you didn't commit a crime and you're here and you've been here for a couple of decades, man, I'm sorry. I have a hard time with it. I do. You could say that, oh, Joe, you either it's all or nothing. I would tell you that's not true. Here's an Obama-appointed judge that ruled that all federal agents operating in Chicago under Operation Midway Blitz must now wear body cameras. Play it.
Breaking news, a federal judge issuing a major expansion her order concerning federal agents involved in immigration operations in Chicago. She says all of them must have body cameras, all the agents there, and then they have to keep them turned on while they're deployed throughout the city.
The federal judge doesn't actually have that authority at all. But at least all the judges are now identifying themselves so they can be tried for sedition. That's what needs to happen. Try them for sedition. Look, there's only one way that ends. One side or the other. The ridiculous side that wants to groom children, cut off penises, and do all sorts of harm and have little second graders reading things about masturbation. Either that wins or morality wins. But right now we're at the stage, we're at the find out stage. And at some point we're going to have to put our foot down and say, look, this is going to be painful and people aren't going to like it. This is the Tiananmen Square on the opposite. This is where evil has overrun our country, and now it's time to put the unrest down by basically calling out and saying, look, we're going to go back to a more moral society. Here's where it is. And by the way, if you're a bad judge, you're out. And if you have to replace 50,000 judges, you do. And if you have to arrest 50,000 judges, you do. Stephen Miller had this on Pritzker. I think you're going to like this one. Play it.
Well, I mean, he's a fool and he's a moron, but also, most importantly, Sean, he hates America. And let's just be honest about it. You can't love your country and then fight President Trump to keep murderers murdering. Just think about that for a second. President Trump is saying, let us work with you, with the FBI, with ICE, with ATF, with DEA, with the National Guard, to stop the murdering in your city. And Pritzker is saying he wants to protect the murderers, the people that are shooting dozens and dozens of people every single week. Chicago is more dangerous than Baghdad. It's more dangerous than Mexico City. So shame on Pritzker, and God bless President Trump for fighting for the citizens of this country, Sean.
That's a guy I really like, Stephen Miller. But they're not talking about it. It's sedition. Governor Pritzker is committing sedition. You have states' rights. You also have federal laws that you have to follow. And now you have people inside of the state that are allowing federal laws, immigration laws specifically, which is, it's a federal deal. It's not a state deal. States don't have authority when it comes to immigration. You just don't. You can say, I want 20 million people to fly into Illinois, and I want to give them all. This is not Canada. You don't have different ability by different areas to do what you want. What is not enumerated to the federal government relies to the state. Second Amendment, by the way, is built right into there. It comes right after free speech. Free speech is not going out there and defending lawlessness and allowing them to beat up 19-year-old kids that are just helping level set what's happening in our government. No, that's called cartel activity. But now cartels are teaming up with left-wing terror organizations, Antifa groups, to murder border officials. This is unbelievable. Play it.
$5 to $10 grand for kidnapping of ICE agents or Customs and Border Patrol agents, non-lethal assault. $50,000 for the assassination of high-ranking officials. Whew. Here's Greg Bavino. He works in Chicago. Says he had a bounty on his head. Watch.
We've got $50,000 bounties on the heads of federal law enforcement officers. We have criminals ramming vehicles, criminals bringing guns to protests. This is not regular street crime here in Chicago. We have assaults on Border Patrol agents, ICE officers, and our allied law enforcement agencies every day, often multiple times per day. And again, these assaults, the lethality of these assaults is increasing.
How can your officers respond to that effectively?
Well, there's power in numbers. There's safety in numbers. Secretary Noem, ever since that terror attack we saw in Dallas, she's been hardening our ICE facilities. President Trump has called in the National Guard, a very prescient and great, strong leadership we've seen from the President of the United States. But, I mean, we are seeing a coordinated, highly organized waging of war on our law enforcement on the streets of Chicago. These men and women are simply enforcing the rule of law and doing their job, and yet there's these foreign terrorist networks who are going after them. They're using a tiered system of bounties to go after them, whether it be doxing their family members, kidnapping, even murdering these brave men and women.
That's the reality. That's what people like Kyle Clark, who is the 9 News in Colorado, that's who he advocates for, is these cartels killing Americans that are standing up and doing their job. And none of these ICE agents, none of them, are stepping out there and saying, I'm going to go after this mom and pop store owner here. I'm going to try and take people out of the street that are just trying to take care of their family. That's not what they're doing. The list has a requirement. The requirement is you had to commit a crime. That's the priority list. It's not just, are you here illegally? And are there cases where they actually have people that are here illegally, they get picked up and they get sent back? Yes, there are. 100%. And is bad stuff happening to good people all the time? Yes. Yes. But unfortunately, is it or is it not that we want opportunity for our kids, for our children? Man, I want the black community in the inner city to have opportunity. I have paid for the education of more kids that were poor, black, brown, some of them illegal. And I did so because who's this poor kid? How the hell did I make it out? Yeah, I was educated. I was given opportunity because I was smart. And I never felt like I deserved it. But what they're doing is taking opportunity away from all of them. It's allowing that chaos to exist so that black kids get to grow up with education systems that are just shit. And maybe they can go be an athlete. Maybe. And then the 99.9% that can't, maybe they could go be a drug dealer and go to prison for a couple decades. I mean, because we're trying to rehabilitate kids, right? No, we're not. We're building thugs and criminals. We're not teaching them anything. We're not teaching them to love the people around them. We're not teaching them to be fathers. We're not teaching them to be husbands. We're not teaching them to be mothers and sisters and wives, we're not teaching them that. And the only thing that we see is Barack Obama get on there and talk about like he's on the high horse. He has abandoned black people. He abandoned them. The leaders and Pritzker, that fat white dude, he doesn't give a shit if they shoot each other in the streets. I mean, let's be realistic. My heart hurts for the families in the poorest communities because every day they have to wake up and they got to do the same shit every day. And the pain, watching your kid get mowed down and shot, and so your brother grows up, wants to be a gangbanger too, so he can get his vengeance. And then we just take God out of the middle of it. We let these Satanists just say it's all white people. Man, it is literally the Democrats that are stealing every opportunity from these young men and women. These kids don't have a chance. And if you think that I got 5 years ago, I got involved in this when I did the Reopen Colorado movement. If you think that I got on that call with Antifa because somewhere along the line it was like advertising clicks or I wanted to get involved in the election, it's because I was watching my community burn to the ground. Play this last cut.
Did you get baptized this morning?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
It's a crazy question. Why did I get baptized?
Why did you choose to go to church this morning?
Sunday. It's God's day, and I've been planning to get baptized for a minute. You know, I want to change my life over, become a better man.
What does it mean to you?
It means a lot. You know, becoming a better man, leaving my old flesh, and just becoming the new Travis.
I wish I didn't care. It'd be so much easier. Oh, man, it's killing me. Yeah, our job is to do what we can, and sometimes it's just not enough. That was, by the way, that was Travis. I don't know if you guys. That was Travis Hunter, who is the extraordinary athlete that came out of University of Colorado. Plays both ways. So he got baptized on Sunday, and before he went on the field, there is a revival happening, but unfortunately we have to cut out the evil that we have so we can get to the good part. And that's not what the left wants. That's not what the Democrats want. They want to lie to you. They want to cheat. They want to steal, and they want to rob our poorest of our community. They want to make them victims instead of making them victors. They want to take away their ability, and pastors are they're so corrupt and to the core and say, I can't talk about politics. It has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with right versus wrong. It's good versus evil. We can't talk about that either. I'm disgusted by what's happened. And yet at the same time, I feel like this immense amount of hope that we're finally cleaning it out. But it's hard to watch because there's this thing, this evil that gets to take away relationships, and it gets to replace it with this void of just a lie. And people bite off and they listen to that lie. Being strong does not mean that you don't care. Saying that you're ready to do things and do harm to someone does not mean that you want violence. It means you're capable of violence, because sometimes you have to fight. It's the only way to push evil back in the hole it came from. You have cartel members that are going after people's families. My brother was murdered by a police officer. I grew up hating police. I actually like my police officer friends. But I recognize that there's bad people in every profession, everything that we do. I gotta go. So I'm sorry. At some point, I want to get to a place where the good wins, and that people like AOC and Schumer and all these people aren't allowed to lie with impunity, and where, you know, it's just not a zero-sum game, and we can say it's all white people, or all black people, or all brown people, or whatever, Asian people. We never talk about Asians. Damn assholes are always like at the top of the list on every test score out there. Little smart guys. Can't say anything about Asians because they're smart as a whip. Cancel me for saying that. Tina had a hearing today, and so we're going to pray for Tina. We're going to pray for President Trump. We're going to pray for our community, and we've got some healing to do, but we can't do healing when you have people like Soros and these evil people that just allow our communities to become victimized. We don't care about education. We care about victimization. And the entire system is captured. I think that's the most horrible part about losing Charlie, is that it's not being well replaced. He was so gifted because he never got angry. And he never cried being a victim. He didn't care. He went in there and he wore the armor of God everywhere he went. I see you, Susan. All right. Let's pray. Father God, I'm just angry. I know there's a lot of people that are angry. I want to be less angry. I want to be more effective. I want to end all the suffering that we have in our communities. I want everybody to have opportunity. I want to be in the utopian world, Father. I want to be in a place where, we don't have to have a conversation about black kids in Chicago shooting other black kids, or trying to figure out who the bad guy is. Is it a MAGA guy, or is it an Antifa kid, or is it a transgender this or that? That we can get to a place where we can normalize society based on what's real, not what's not real. I want us, Father, to get to a place where we can recognize and be able to speak about good versus evil, no matter where it is and what it represents. If it's Muslim, great. If it's Jewish, great. but that we individualize the cartel itself for what it is and the evil that it produces and the things that it does to hurt us as a community. Father, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but we're going to bring it to you right now, and I'm just going to ask you, Father, to help us work this problem and help us work past all the obstacles that are in front of us, and if you could bless our leadership, President Trump, Tom Homan, Tulsi Gabbard, Bobby Kennedy, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino. I know Susie Wild's got a tremendous job. Peter Tickton, John Case. I could just keep going on the men and women that are standing up and doing great things. And yet, Father, we still seem to fall behind on servicing the problem and not the symptoms. And it's easy for me to be an armchair quarterback and say, this is our priority. But I just feel like we haven't gotten to the place where we're willing to pull the roots out of these problems that we have in our society. So I just ask you to give our leadership the strength to do that, the character to carry through and to do the things that are necessary in order to protect our children and our grandchildren and generations we'll never know. Help us, Father, that we may cut out the evil that we have and break free of any sort of owning, that they feel like they own us, and that they can guide the American experiment in their direction, which only seems to favor a small group. We know, Father, that there are countries that are messed up all over the world, people that are suffering. Sending them back to suffering is not necessarily a good thing. So, Father, I would ask you to bless the leadership in those countries and to help those people be able to create change in their own countries. Then we may have some harmony globally. I don't even know what that looks like. It's such a mess right now. And Father, we're ready and able to step in the gap and to do the things that are necessary. Tina Peters is in jail right now. She is a willing and able servant. So Father, I just ask you to protect her and to get her out. I'm really upset over these judges, Father. And I know just it's not becoming to sit here and to curse at them, but it just makes me mad because we make victims out of good people, and we allow bad people that do bad things to continue to act with impunity. Well, it just needs to stop. And I don't know what the answer is, Father, but I bring it to you. We bring it to you. We so badly want to live in a utopian world, and we know it's just not possible. This is a fallen world. So, Father, I just ask that you help us put on your full armor and to be able to go out there and to do battle. Some of it with words. And I don't know what the answer is for replacing Charlie Kirk, but man, we got to figure out a way to reach these young people and to give them the full armor of you, Father. Help us, Father, that we may be bold in our speeches. We may speak truth, and that we may set aside petty differences and get to a place of dialogue. But dialogue with good, not a dialogue with the ridiculous. I ask these things, Father, humbly in Jesus' name. Amen. Whew. Yeah, I'm just reading the comments. All right, you guys have a great day. I get to go meet and some people and do some stuff with the Dream Center, which Dream Center is trying to raise $6-7 million and to basically help men that get out of prison, that they can reassimilate and break off that rearview mirror and get into trade, something that the Bureau of Prisons should be doing to empower these people. But listen, nobody said that life was going to be easy. Nobody said it was going to be fair. Nobody said that you were going to come out the other end of it and you were going to escape it without dying. Quite the opposite. What we are required to do is to serve him. And I don't even know what that looks like for you. I know what it looks like for me. But I want to thank you all for being a part of this experiment of doing this podcast for the last 5 years. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the time. I'm grateful for I'm grateful for all of you. So God bless you all. And yeah, I'll see you soon.
rise up untamed. In the heart of the fight where the wild ones roam, Oltmann's calling, bringing truth back home. From conservative daily to this untamed fire, we shatter the silence, lifting spirits higher. No chains can hold us, no lies can prevail. Authentic and fearless on this rugged trail. Patriots gather under stars and stripes. Untamed nation, igniting the night. Untamed nation, let the truth roll out in this land of the free. Standing proud from sea to shining sea, we won't back down. Catch the fire, wear the crown. Untamed nation, it's our battle song, motivating hearts where the brave belong. Yeah, untamed and wild, forever strong. Play it again all night long. Break the mold, chase the real. No more games, time to heal. Joe's voice leads the untamed crew. Truth matters through and through. Untamed nation, let the truth roll out in this land of the free. Standing proud from sea to shining sea, we won't back down. Catch the fire, wear the crown. Untamed nation, it's our battle song, motivating hearts where the brave belong. Yeah, untamed and wild, forever